Muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches a todos. Su servidor Hugo Amezcua. Muchas gracias a la mesa directiva de CIOs Latam por permitirme presentar este nuevo CIO Blog. Para aquellos que nos acompañan en la sesión de Zoom, muchísimas gracias. Para aquellos que también nos acompañan de manera síncrona a través de nuestro canal de CIOs Latam TV, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. En esta ocasión estamos de manteles largos. Nos está acompañando nuevamente un socio ya de algún tiempo de CIOs Latam, Syniti, partner de ya hace algún tiempo, líder en transformación, optimización y gobierno de datos. En esta ocasión contamos con la presencia de Ricardo Rosales. Ricardo es Senior Vice President and Managing Director de Américas para Syniti. Y Ricardo nos va a hacer favor de compartirnos una ponencia como título tiene cómo impulsar tu estrategia de Master Data Management y lograr mejores resultados comerciales. Pues sin mayor preámbulo, le voy a ceder la palabra a Ricardo. Recuerden, para los que están en la sesión de manera síncrona, ya sea en YouTube o en Zoom, háganos favor de postear sus preguntas y con muchísimo gusto las moderamos y se las hacemos llegar al ponente. Ricardo, thank you very much for being here with us. Over to you.
Thank you, Hugo, and thank you to CIOs Latam for having me. We're going to do the presentation in English as we have different groups here, and it'll be a little bit easier on my part. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
All right, so for those of you on the call who we have not met, my name is Ricardo Rosales. I am the SVP and Managing Director of the Americas, which means I oversee our go-to-market strategies for Syniti. But most importantly, I've been focused on data for 18 years. I've helped many companies. These are global implementations of how do we start a data strategy? How do we look at our data? How do we make sure it's clean? And most importantly, how do we attribute the success that we have in data? How do we attribute that to the business? And so usually when I get asked this question, if you look at the title, the thing that we have to talk about is how do we fuel our MDM strategy? Because I think that is going to be the hardest thing for anybody in this call for you to do. As a CIO of your company, you're responsible for bringing new innovations. And when there are optimization in supply chain, you may have optimization in finance. The next level of optimizations in any of those businesses is optimizing your data. But in order to do that, you have to kick it off. So that's what we're going to cover today. One of the main things, I hope this group walks away with is how do we bridge a gap between IT and the business? The IT says, here's the tool that you should use. The business says, hey, what's the value of this investment? What is the point of doing it? We're going to talk about bridging that gap. There's also common mistakes. I have seen companies implement MDG. I've seen companies implement MDM or Informatica or other solutions. I see common mistakes. It doesn't matter the solution you use. And I'm here to talk about how do you avoid them so that you can help save your company money. And then when you're going to pick a solution and you're going to pick a tool, what is it that you look for? What are the most important aspects? So I don't think I'm going to take the full hour. I think I'll take roughly around 30 minutes to 40 minutes. So for those of you on the call, you're going to have some time back. But I do know that this is going to be very helpful for folks, and there's going to be some lessons learned for the group. So the first question I want to ask all you CIOs on the call is, what business are you in? This is a common question I ask. I've done many webinars. I've had groups and presentations of room full of people. And I ask this first question, what business are you in? The answer I get normally from anybody is, well, we're in a pharmaceutical company, therefore we make medicines for the health of the world. Some company may do manufacturing of parts for automotive parts. So I say, what business are you in? So the person will say, oh, we manufacture automotive parts, or we manufacture supplies, or we manufacture, it could be food products or consumer packaged goods. But none of those are the correct answer. So what I want the first thing, if there's anything to walk away with for the CIOs, for us that are in leadership positions, you have to know you're in either You're in the business of making money, or you're in the business of saving money. That's it. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what the company is doing. You as a CIO, you run your business. And the business that you run has to have profits, and it's going to have some expenses. So you're either going to make the company money, or you're going to save the company money. So anything you do from here on forward, it doesn't matter if it's data. It doesn't matter if you decide to license SAP, or you decide to invest in a warehouse management system. You got to look in those two terms and nothing else. So we're going to talk about how does this tie into data. So the biggest challenge that I've seen is, what is the value? So if you are going in front of the CEO, or you're going in front of the steering committee, and you're saying, hey, look, I'm the CIO, and I think we should invest into this project of cleansing data. The first question you're going to get asked by the CEO is, why would you want to do that? So what? If you have 80% quality data today, and you have 95% quality of data tomorrow, who cares? What's the value? Because we can run the business today, we're going to run the business tomorrow. There's no need to invest the money. I'm going to share with you, how do you connect financial impact? How do you connect value to the data that you're cleansing? So when you go through the project, typically, these are the things that the CIOs are trying to solve. So when I get asked to come to the presentations, or I come talk to the steering committee, they say, hey, Ricardo, we need help. So can you talk to us on how we can trust data? If we don't trust our data, we don't move fast enough. The reports come out, nobody believes in the reports. When we are doing supply chain planning, nobody believes in the numbers. Therefore, you have a human affecting Excel spreadsheets to make sure that the MRP planning comes out correctly. Or the financial month-end close, cierre del mes, right? The month-end close has to happen. But look, finance takes 15 days. Sometimes it takes 30 days to close it, okay? That is all trust in data. So people are not moving fast enough. Or some of the questions may be, well, we have to create new materials. We're about to start a new market. We're about to start a new product line. We have to create the records, not only the finished goods, we have to create the semi-finished goods, raw materials, the vendors, and that's taking too long. Some other folks may say, we have to enforce the rules, we have to manually cleanse, or we have documentation. We don't know what the answers are. We don't know what our rules are. We don't know where they are, or how do we enforce them. But the first and the hardest one is, what is the value? That is, if we can't answer the financials, then there's no way you can get any MDM program off the ground, okay? And so why is this so hard? Why is it that you say, yeah, I've been trying to do this and it's been a difficult challenge? Well, let's look at some basic new ways of thinking now. We're in 2023. So you might hear, we're in the information age. The information age is a long time ago. That was in the late 90s. It's in the early 2000s. We are no longer in the information age. We are now in the attention age. This is the thing that we are working on. When you go in front of the steering committee, why would the CEO pay attention to you, the CIO? If you're going to go talk to the board of directors and you're about to embark on a hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million investment, why should they pay attention to you? And to get the attention, what you need is the financial impacts, the business value, and you also need to understand the rules of the game. And so here's, I think, a fun piece to cover when we talk about business. If I were to ask any of you about a sport, if I say, raise your hand if you watch football Mexicano, right? Who's winning versus Americas versus Chivas, right? And I say, well, who's winning? The first thing you would say is look at the scoreboard, right? If I said to you, go watch Fútbol Americano, and the first question you ask is, well, who's winning the game? Well, I don't know. Let's look at the scoreboard. In the business is a game. And so for us to know if we're going to be winning or losing our game, if we're going to be winning or losing, we have to know what finance is. Because then they finance is the language of business, even if we like it or not. So what I have found with CIOs is that when we talk about data, I ask the question, why are we going to do this? What's important? And what is your return on investment? And usually I do not get an answer back. So if you're going to play the game, you got to know the language, right? Finance in business is your scoreboard. That is telling your leaders whether or not you're winning or you're losing. So the scoreboard tells the management, what your vision is and what's your strategy to reach that vision. So it doesn't matter, again, if you're in a certain industry today, the next time you go to another industry or a third industry, the finance is what's going to combine the language so we're all speaking the same language and we know how we're doing. So why is it hard? Why is it so hard? It should be easy. It's just all data. I'll tell you why. When we talk about master data management, inherently, we're talking about master data. Pretty simple, right? Like, okay, why am I in this call? Just to learn that MDM means master data? Well, no kidding. That's an easy alignment. So let's think about master data. If you look at materials, you talk about duplicates. If you talk about vendors, you talk about payment terms and how do we improve our payment terms so we can increase our cash flow. Or if you're talking about customers, you may talk about incorrect addresses or emails. I mean, just to give you an example on duplicate, if you're going to go look at duplicate spare parts, okay, and you're going to remove your duplicates, the first thing you will find is whether or not you have excess inventory. It is quite possible that you have, as an example, 14 million pesos of excess inventory because you have duplicate spare parts. If you have a spare part in one of your plants and they have, let's say, 7 million pesos worth of inventory in stock, and then you have a duplicate material in the same plant, they could easily have that material in another location. Or worse, you may have it just down the street at another plant, a separate plant, the same material again. But you don't know that they're the same material because they have different numbers. So when you're looking at duplicates, well, the way to know the financial impact is you got to look at the inventory. And the same thing for vendors and payment terms. If you are going to pay your vendor in 30 days, or you're going to pay your vendor in 90 days, well, if you pay your vendors in 90 days, that means you have greater cash flow. Those are the financial impacts. But the key to all of these things is that you have to go to the transactions to understand the value. That's the difference. So when I give you the example of materials and understanding the duplicates in materials, you have to go look at the inventory to know the value of the material. Or you have to go look at the purchase orders to understand the value of a vendor. So if you have a vendor with a 90-day payment term, the answer is, so what? Who cares? But if I said to you, you have a vendor with 90-day payment terms, and that vendor, you do 50 million pesos of purchases per year, and by increasing it by 30 days, you have access to that cash for 30 more days, that it makes a difference. So you have to go look at the transactions to understand the value of the master data. So if there was one thing to walk away with, if you want to know, how do I tie the value? The value is done by linking your master data to the transactions. There's no other way. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do this, a little bit more about how to prepare for your project, but this is inherent. So when you go talk to your team that reports to you, and you say to them, hey, go take a look at the data and tell me if I have problems, they're going to look at the master data. You need to coach them and say, oh, by the way, go look at the transactions and let me know the value. How much how much materials do we have in stock? How many vendors and purchase orders do we have? Or how much sales do we do with a certain customer? Because not all records are created the same. Not all vendors are the same and not all customers are the same. So you're able to take a look and now you can tell a complete story. So I want to pause there, Hugo. If you could take a look, is there any questions in the chat or any questions that are coming in through YouTube? I can stop now and answer some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Guys, any question here on the session, or any question, JC or Maricela in YouTube?
No, everything okay in YouTube.
Okay.
For a while.
Somehow, I know that you will address this during your presentation, Ricardo, but probably it will be good to put on the table like the first question, right? I mean, a first question will be is, how do we create a data quality strategy linked precisely using the link word with an MDM strategy? So probably if you can address that, or you can elaborate a little bit about that, it will be great.
I have a slide that talks about that.
Okay, perfect. Hold on. I see that Luis Angel is raising his hand. Luis, you have the open mic, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do have a question, and that is, I still don't get it really how you link this master data to transactions. I mean, I don't know if you can elaborate on that or try to explain it in some other ways because I don't really get it.
Perfect. So let's run through an exercise together. How do we link them? So the first thing I would do, and I'll stay with the same story as I shared before. So let's take a look at materials. And so imagine your company has spare parts, and these spare parts are used for machine maintenance. Maybe the spare parts are used for plant maintenance, or you could have components that you have for your finished goods. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is look for duplicates. There are, as an example, there is a brewery in Mexico. There's one of the two top breweries, so you can imagine which one it could be. And this brewery had major duplicates within the same plant, and they had the same material duplicates across multiple plants at the same time. Every single one of those records had a different material number. So it was funny because we would look at the material and you say a number. The number is a 1A123. And in this plant, it was a tornillo. And a 1A123 in another plant was Malta, as an example, right? And so it was really hard for them to know how much inventory they really had. So then the first thing we did was, well, let's take a look at which ones they are. We found the number. So let's say 1A123 is a duplicate. You have a tornillo 1A123, and you have the same tornillo that's showing up as 1C123. So then what we did is we say, okay, let me go for that number, 1A123. I'm going to go look at all the inventory. Oh, look, 1A123 has $1 million pesos of inventory. So you look at the quantity and you look at the cost per the tornillo, and then you multiply the quantity by the cost, and that gives you how much inventory, financial inventory that you're holding, okay? And then you go look at the duplicate and see a 1C123, you go look at inventory and you say, how much quantity do I have? How much did it cost me to buy the quantity? And you put those two costs together, and now you have the total cost of inventory that you have. So the next question is, you go to the planner and you say, do we need all this inventory? And 99% of the time, they're going to say, no, that's duplicates. We didn't know they were there. We were ordering it twice. So we say, okay, if we combine this inventory and either A, we give that inventory back to the vendor so that we can get a return, or B, we stop ordering more until we deplete the inventory. Once we bring this number down, how much money are we saving? So maybe you had $2 million pesos worth of inventory, and by reducing it by 60%, you're saving yourself, I don't know, a little over $1 million pesos as an example. So that's how we're linking from the master data, the materials, down to the inventory, down to the value of that inventory. Does that make sense?
Luis, right. You're speaking on mute if you're speaking.
I'm going to keep on progressing. So Luis, if you have another question, please jump in. I'm more than happy to elaborate on that scenario.
Let's move on.
No, I guess that example was very illustrative. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. I have many examples. I have examples within vendors, credit limit, risks. I'll share one more quick story. So we had a customer that does medical supplies, and their medical supplies are very expensive. So imagine going to a hospital and imagine seeing a bed, the hospital bed. Imagine seeing the x-ray machines at the hospital. So every medical supply, every machine is very expensive. So the hospitals have to have a credit limit. So this particular customer is in the US. They had a customer that had a $500,000 credit limit, $500,000, okay? But the problem is that customer was duplicated 2 more times, and they didn't know. So the customer was ordering through one number, and then the second customer number is the same customer. They were ordering again through the second customer number, and then they ordered a third time through a third customer number. And this particular business wasn't doing so well, so they were late on their payments. What they didn't realize that their exposure to risk was $1.5 million because a customer was $500,000 here, $500,000 credit limit here, and a $500,000 credit limit in a third one. and the customer was taking advantage of it. So you'd be surprised at the stuff that you find in the data, but we would not have known that until we looked at the sales orders and we determined how much they're buying per year and how many, based on invoices, how much was outstanding. So it's really interesting the moment you link the master and the transactions together. You start really seeing the financial impacts of it. Okay, so the second concept I want everybody to think about is, this is a traditional approach, okay? So if I said to you, hey, let's do MDM, how do you want to do it? Again, 99% of the time, a CIO is going to say, oh, I'm going to go look at the vendors, I'm going to look at materials and customers or finance data, and that's it. That's all they're going to look at. And I say, okay, if we're going to buy a product from a vendor, and if I have the vendor, what else do I need? And they'll say, oh, you need the purchase info record. Oh, interesting. And if I have the purchase info record and I have the vendor, what else do I need? Oh, you need pricing conditions. Okay. And you need rebate agreements, and you need this, and you need that. So just know, just because you do vendor, it doesn't mean all of your data is ready. It's just vendor will be ready. And now somehow you have to manage data on a separate process. Usually it's manual outside. What you're doing, again, there's more risk because you're not controlling the whole scenario, okay? The way to think about it, and again, we're talking about business. The way to think about data is, let's talk about the business first, then we talk about the data we need to support it. So if you look at the top and you talk to your CEO, the CEO may say to you, you know what's important for us this year? Tax optimization. Like, we have to make sure on everything we buy and everything we sell and everything we manufacture, the way our taxes are rolled up, we have a much more efficient method. Maybe we manufacture in Spain, and maybe we assemble in Colombia, and then we sell it in Mexico. That's an example, right? You have different tax advantages by manufacturing in Spain or manufacturing in Europe, and then you have different tax benefits of assembly in South America before you get to sell it in Mexico, right? So if you're going to do tax optimization, then what do you need to do? Well, we got to look at the materials. We got to look at where we can ship it from and where we're going to ship it to. We got to look at the customer base, and we got to look at the vendor base. And you got to create this whole supply chain of data. The data has to be in place for tax optimization to work. Now, you could do that manually. You could do it through Excels and cross your fingers, hopefully it all works. Or you can have an actual plan with MDM and have workflows that work across the globe and work across all your teams. And the moment they enter the information, you can be assured that it's right the first time. So the second thing you look at then is say, okay, what data do I need to support it? So we talked about the materials and the vendors and the PIRs and all those things. And then, by the way, it doesn't matter where the application is. It doesn't matter the system. You can manage data across. But the difference here is that you're talking the language of business. When you're here, you're only talking the language of data. And to be honest, nobody outside our world will understand what this means. So one of the things I'll share with you, as a personal story. I was born here in the U.S. My family came from Mexico, and my dad speaks fluent English, but my uncles do not speak fluent English. They speak Spanish, and they try their best to speak English, but and I asked my dad, I said, Dad, why is it that you know how to speak English, but my uncles, they don't know how to speak English, they only speak Spanish? And he said, Mijo, he goes, I had two choices. Either I teach all the United States how to speak Spanish, or I can teach myself how to speak English. He goes, I think it was easier for me to just speak English. So it made me laugh. The same thing is with data. You have two choices. You could teach the CEO, CFO, the steering committee, the board of directors. You could teach everybody data, or you could learn business and convert the language of data into business. Then it makes sense, right? So when you're looking at your data strategy, don't look at it from this approach. Look at it from what does it mean from a business perspective. Hey, what are we doing as a company? Oh, we're going to improve our vendor spend, or we're going to increase our cash flow by, instead of paying our vendors in 30 days, we're going to look to pay our vendors in 60 days. Now, because you have access to the data, you know how much cash flow that's going to generate from 30 to 60 days. They may say to you, we have a new business or we have a new product and we're going to launch a new product. In fact, we might be launching many products. We have customers that do that. Well, if I'm going to do new product introductions, I have to make sure I manage all these pieces for this company to be successful. And when you do it like this, when you're able to speak the language of business, now you're making the connection between the business and IT. So one of the main points in agendas item we're covering is how do we connect the two? This is the way. So now we've covered 2 ways how to do it. First, you have to cover the financial language that's important for the leaders. Second, you have to talk about the business impact like this based upon your business objective. And that way you can tie IT to business. So we tied IT to finance, and now we're tying IT to business. Does this make sense here? Or any questions from the group? All right, I'm going to share some common mistakes because these common mistakes cost a lot of money. So I think this is very important for the team. I have walked into to projects. They said, Ricardo, come help us out. You know, we've been trying to implement MDM. We've been trying to implement MDG for a year. It's not going well. We're not getting the results we're looking for. All right, common mistakes. First and foremost, when you implement MDM or you implement MDG, Master Data Governance, it cannot be IT only. This is very common. It's not a technical exercise. If I were to ask the CIO group here, CIO LATAM, who owns the data, IT or the business? What would you say?
The business.
The business.
Yes.
Business.
No doubt.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Amen. The business owns the data. They own the data. They own the processes. So when I've seen, I look at the group and I say, oh, this is a great team. By the way, raise your hand if you're IT, and everybody raises their hand. I said, raise your hand if you're the business, and one raises their hand. I'm like, okay, that's a common problem, okay? Because the process has to work for them. The business is the one entering the data. They're the ones validating it. They're the ones getting through the process. They're the ones supporting the outside business group. So we got to make sure they're included with the workflows. They have to be included with what's going on. Second problem, big bang approach. I'm not sure if that's a common vocabulary in LATAM. Big bang meaning I'm going to do everything at once. The problem with big bang is the business doesn't know what they want yet. I can guarantee you what the business says they want in blueprinting and what they want at go live will be 2 different things. And by the way, what you go live with, you're going to end up changing it 6 months to 12 months later. And you say, well, why? Why is that? Why wouldn't the business know what they want? Well, first, they've never been through this before. They don't know. They've never thought about it in this way. And you're changing human behavior, and you're changing how they have to look at this. And number 2, the moment they put their hands on the keyboard and the moment they go through the workflow, they're thinking of a better way, and then they want to change. And that's perfect. That's what we want too. We want them to change it. We want it to be optimized. Another thing to think about is, oh, by the way, the business changes. So let's say you went live, everybody's happy, everybody cheers for you. Okay, guess what? 6 months from now, your business is changing. Therefore, you got to invoke new rules or new workflows. And 12 months from now, the same thing and whatnot. So small wins are very key. Small wins. Let's start small. Let's do materials first. Let's do vendor first. Let's do purchase info records, or let's break this down in smaller pieces. Maybe you're not going to roll this out to LATAM and Asia and Europe at the same time. Maybe you do LATAM first, learn from those mistakes, and then you progress. And then what you have to do is show value, and you have to measure value. Okay, what's the value of doing this? By the way, we had a reduction in time, or we have a reduction in costs in terms of the data that we have in the gaps. This is my favorite recommendation out of all the recommendations out there. When you find an error, do not fix it. Okay, that's a common mistake. Mostly, we are in the IT business. We're here to fix problems. That's all we live for. Every day we fix problems. This is what we do. The answer is, when you find an error, measure it first, then you fix it. Okay, because imagine you and your team are very busy, and the CEO is going to ask you, hey, what have you been doing for the last 2 months? I've been busy. I have tickets, I have support, I have business problems, I have problems in production, I have problems in shipping, and I've been really busy in fixing data. And they're going to say, okay, well, you haven't fixed the root cause. But a different story is actually, I found the root cause. And by the way, it was $2 million worth of pesos that we were having troubles with. And my team fixed this in 2 days. So we just saved the company 2 million pesos. And we just saved the company here 3 million pesos. And we just saved the company here 5 million pesos. So all in all, you're now a profit center. You're saving the company money. And then guess what? When you go back and say, by the way, I'm looking for 5 million pesos for this project, you're going to get that investment. I've seen it time and time again, but you have to get the practice. Share the culture. You got to change the culture with your team. Hey, you found the error. Don't fix it. Measure it. Then you fix it. And then tell the story. This one is not a science project. Again, it goes back to the Big Bang. Try not to do too much. Make it simple as you can. If you have, let's say, vendor account groups, and you have, let's say, 7 different vendor account groups that you want to fix, start with 2. Then you go to 4, then you go to all 7. But you learn as you go. So this is an important topic about value. So do not look at this as what is my cost by record. This is a common thing I see. So somebody says, okay, I have 100 records I have to fix. And, Fulanito over here took them 8 hours to fix it. And then somebody else over here took 10 hours to fix the next part. And so 40 hours. If 40 hours of my people's time, and I charge, the salary is X pesos per hour. So I save the company, X amount of pesos. The problem is, if you're looking at people's time as a value, it's not going to be enough value, and you're losing out on the bigger story. So you have to look at the records you're fixing and the records impact to the business, not just look at the people, how much time they're spending, and how much do they cost. Okay. I think that's also a very important piece here. So this is cost by business impact. Oh, and this is also very important too. If you have, a team of 20, or the business, even worse, I'll tell you this, the business has a team of 40, and the team of 40 are manually fixing data, or they're manually working on workflows and Excel spreadsheets. And you say to the vice president of supply chain, if I help you with MDM, your team of 40 can now go to a team of 20. We can help save you time, or we save you headcount. You know what the VP is going to say? They're going to say, don't touch my people. It took me a hard time to get the headcount. Now you're telling me you're going to take away my people? No. So don't say you're going to reduce headcount. That could be a red hot wire. It's not about headcount. It's about value and what are the people working on? So, hey, VP of supply chain, do you want your people to work on Excel spreadsheets for 10 hours a day? No, nobody does. Let's have them work on other activities like MRP planning or procurement or other things that will bring much more value to the company. So don't focus on headcount. It's about value to the company, value of what they're doing, working on other things outside of just manually looking at Excels. All right, this is the last piece. Before I go into the last piece, any questions that is out there? Hugo, do you see any questions, or Charlie, you see any questions on YouTube?
Guys, you have any questions? You have your mic open?
Not at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
All right, team. This is the last set of slides, and this is going to bring us all together. When you're selecting a solution, what do you look for? So the first thing I would say, actually, I'm not going to go to the next slide. I'm going to stay here for a little bit. Again, talk about percentages. 90-some% of the time, when I get invited to the table, I get asked 3 questions. Hey, Ricardo, can your solution do workflow? Can your solution have centralized rules? And does your solution have a dashboard? And I'm going to say yes. And then you go to the next vendor and you're going to say, does your solution have workflows? And does your solution have dashboards? And does your solution have a place to put rules? And they're going to say yes. So when we're all saying yes, how do you know the difference? How do you know which one's better or not? So then we start looking at user experience. That is not the right measuring stick. There's only one measuring stick to have. And this measuring stick will give you the difference between success or failure on a project. The question you ask is this: how agile are you to change? If I give you a rule how long does it take you to put that rule in the tool? And the rule, and it's now enforceable in production. And some of the tools say, it takes me a week. Some tools say, it'll take me a few days. But the tool that you're looking for and what we differentiate ourselves in, we're talking about minutes to an hour at the most. Why is that important? Because if you're going to do a workflow and it takes you a week, or if you're going to do a rule and that takes you days, guess what? You have 400 rules you're never going to finish in a year. And you have, 50 workflows and it takes you a week, that's another 50 weeks right there. So what the difference between success and failure is, what is the unit measure of change? How long does it take me to do this? And I'll tell you why that becomes important later. After you go live, the business will continue changing. They're going to learn, and we want them to learn, and we want them to get better. And they're going to come back to you, the CIO, and they're going to say, we have a production problem. And I need you to put this new rule in this production so that we can stop people from creating this problem. And if it takes you weeks to do it, then that is a risk. They told me the problem and I got to fix it. And it's going to take me weeks before I get there. What you want to say to them is, don't worry, it only takes me minutes or it takes me an hour and you're going to see the fix like that. That's agility. So if there's one question for you to ask the vendors, what do you look for? What is your unit of measure of change? And you're looking for hours, not days and not weeks, okay? So the question is, why choose Syniti for our MDM solution? Or why choose us for RDG approach? So we always talked about business outcomes. That's our culture. We talk that with you. We help you think about your business outcomes. So we talk how we think about your financial impacts. It's faster because it's agile. So it takes us minutes to an hour and okay, here's the workflow. Here it is. I can show the business pretty quickly. They can review it, whether they like it or not. They want to change it, perfect, and we change it. Obviously, there's a user interface that's friendly, agility, and then one platform to do everything you want. Let me give an example here about RDG. If those of you have heard of SAP MDG, it's called SAP Master Data Governance. This is a solution SAP sells. You may know that it is could be rather expensive to implement. What we found the reason why. It's because you need to know how to program and you need to know how to make these technical changes as a technical tool. So we said, well, I don't want to spend my time in a technical tool. I want to put in there what I want so I can go look at what? I want to look at the business outcomes. So we built this product called RDG. It's called Rapid Data Governance. It's an add-on. It sits on top of MDG. And what it helps us to do is we put in RDG what we want, and RDG will auto-configure MDG for us. So if you want to know the savings on an estimate, it's a 50% or so, 40 to 50% reduction in services and labor costs to implement MDG. We had a customer, we had the CFO actually, and he wanted to implement MDG. And we said to him, can we introduce RDG to you? And he's like, okay, why would I want it? I said, well, we believe it'll knock down the cost of services by 50%. And he literally crossed his arms and says, if you knock it down by 50%, he goes, I'll be the first one to be doing references. I'll be the first one to do presentations. And sure enough, we did it. And the cost had come out to be 50%. And we were able to do it in a shorter period of time. And so there's more conversations we can have about RDG. I'm excited about it because we're seeing the results and it's exciting for the customers because now it's within your fingertips. So if you try to implement MDG before and you had a trouble, give us a call. We will evaluate it for you, tell you where to focus on and help you be successful. If you're in the middle of an MDG implementation and you really want to reduce the cost for phase 2 and phase 3, you can give us a call. Or third, you finished MDG, it's already live, it's working, perfect. And then what you can do is use RDG for maintenance and ongoing maintenance and managed services, okay? Now, really quickly, if those of you have looked at MDG from SAP and you decided there's not enough budget, either the licensing of MDG was too high or the cost of implementation was too high, we also have a product called MDM, and it's also a much more cost-effective approach. But because all we do for 25 years is look at MDM. We invest a lot of dollars in our MDM tool. And the number thing that we focus all these years, or 25 years, we focus on agility and flexibility. So there's, again, the same speed you have with RDG, we have it natively, and we're able to quickly implement MDM very, very fast. The business is happy because they get to see it faster. They make their changes, we change it again, and we go through those cycles. By the time we go live, the business knows what they're getting. There's no mystery there. With that, we're able to cover all the different aspects of MDM, combining of, hey, how do we align business with IT? How do we align finance and IT? How do we get the value? We talked about common mistakes, and we talked about what to look for. With that, Hugo, I'll pass it back to you. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Hey, guys, please raise your hand, or the mic is open to you. I don't know if you have any question. Well, in the meantime, the guys are warming up with any question here. I have one question that I just received here is, and I just read it, literally reading as experience sharing when it comes to, and you mentioned, when it comes to the approach to implement an MDM strategy when comparing the big bang approach versus the wave approach, what has been those main challenges that you've seen or you've faced during the different implementations, or if you can share some best practices there?
Yeah, the biggest, so going back versus, let's say even of the smaller approaches, why we say smaller, the business sometimes, not sometimes, they don't know what they want. They say they want a workflow and you give it to them, and then they're complaining. They're like, oh, I didn't like it. It's like, okay, well, what is it that you want? And so you have to show them what it looks like. And you have to, after you show them, and then they say, oh, this is what I want to change. And then you make that change. But if you don't show them, if the biggest problem is you build out the workflow and it takes you 6 months before you show them the first prototype, 6 months is a long time. And now they finally see it. And you say, well, you have to accept it because this is what you asked for. They're going to be like, oh, geez, this is not what I want. And trust me, they're never saying to their bosses, well, this is what I asked for. They don't say that. All they complain about is why I didn't like it. And so you have to go put up with the politics of, you did what they asked. Yes, you did, but then they still don't like it. And now you got to work and then you got to extend. So the way to fix that is you have to do rapid prototypes. So within the first weeks, let's show them the result of what they asked for. I guarantee they're going to want to change. That's perfectly, and we're happy with that. We want those changes. We want those deltas. So we continue going through iterations. So it's a Scrum approach. It's an iteration approach. In the 6 months, you've probably gone through 15 to 20 iterations. And the old method, you may go through 4 or 5. And trust me, we've done 4 or 5. You're barely a third of the way there. So hopefully that helps the question. What have we seen in terms of setting that up? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the answer. Any other question with the audience?
Hugo, I have a question that I want to make sure I answer, and this is also a question. So they say, hey, so where do I start? What do I do? I want to put in a strategy. I don't even know where to go, where to start. So there's going to be, what we do is we do an assessment. So we'll bring in one of our leaders. Okay. This is a person who lives this life for 20 something years. Okay. And the first thing we do is we'll look at, okay, where are you? Let's go find out first, what is your company's objective? Because we have to align the data to the company objective. That's first. In the absence of a company objective, which is rare, there's definitely company objectives. Number 2, let's go look at the business and where the tickets are coming in. Let's take a look at where are we seeing troubles in production, troubles in procurement, troubles in shipping, troubles in packaging. And those troubles that you tend to see come in form of tickets. And then you look at the tickets and say, let me go look at the root cause. So that's number 2. So we're going to look at the objectives and we're looking at tickets to kind of where do we look for gold? Okay. Number 3 is we measure it. Number 4, let's look at your organization. Is the VP of supply chain bought in? Is the VP of procurement also a sponsor? Is the CFO a sponsor? Because you have implications of finance. So we're going to look at it from an organization perspective, right? As well. And once you have to align the organization. We know who's supporting, who's not supporting, who do you need to talk to? How do we influence them? Okay, out of the vendor, customer, and materials, or out of these areas, which one has the most opportunity for improvement, most financial impacts, that's what you're focused on as a wave one. And then you have, usually by that time, you'll have that VP's support. You're going to have $1 investment it will cost, but you can tell them based on looking at the data, we measured it, we expect a 3x or a 5x return on this investment. And at the end of the process, you're cleansing the data and you're doing MDM, you go live, again, the data's clean now, and you can say to them, look, because of what we cleaned, we've reduced the inventory, we've done this or that, here's your return already. And in 6 months, we're going to measure again. In 1 year, we'll measure again. And that's what you continue doing.
Right. Thank you. Hey, quick question. When I think of who are more receptive within the organization, who will be the key stakeholders that may be more receptive to kind of explore the possibility to to create an endeavor in MDM, considering the border, supply chain or value chain, the different enabling functions that we have in a standard company. What would you say that it will be the most not the most important, but at least the key stakeholder that it will be better to approach to kind of present this type of a strategy?
The CFO, number one.
CFO.
The CFO, they hold the purse.
Okay.
So what happens is that if you can fix the CFO's problem with month-end close, right? It takes them 30 days to do a month-end close, and it should take them 4 days, and you can help them fix that problem. You're gonna get the budget that you're looking for, right? Or sometimes the CFO is charged with, hey, CFO, the CFO says, oh, we got to reduce our internal costs of supply chain by 10%. Okay, great. Now you talk to the CFO. I'm going to help you, CFO, get to your 10%. And then you go to the VP of supply chain because they're also responsible. Now they're the business. And you say, hey, look, how do we do this? Or what are we looking at first? Right?
Well, then the question should be is then, but you don't start with the CFO, because in order to reach the CFO, you probably need to start first with an advocate, an internal advocate, that in this case will be like the supply chain manager or leader, right?
There you go. It depends on your comfort level. Some CIOs have a really good relationship with the CFO. Some CIOs only go to the CFO whenever it's needed. If you don't have that comfort level with the CFO, then go with the supply chain first, and that you will find something in supply chain to help you out. That would be the first place I would look.
Right.
But you gotta, if you can give the supply chain VP a story that they can tell, and then by the way, CFO, you can hit your KPIs by us doing this. Now the CFO has a success story that they can tell. You're going to get the support that you need. What the challenge is, if you go talk to the VP of supply chain and have them go talk to the CFO, it's going to be harder, because this VP of supply chain is not able to speak to data or speak to the business outcomes of data as well as the CIO can. So I do recommend the CIO to help take ownership of the conversation and tell the VP, look, I can help you have that conversation with the CFO. And that way, when you hear a rebuttal or you hear questions, you know what they're thinking. Okay, you have a worry in this area, or you have a concern, or you simply don't understand. And now you're there to help explain the scenarios and what to do. So, don't just depend on somebody to tell your story. You should be there to tell your story as well.
Right. Okay, any other question, guys in the audience, or Maricela, JC in YouTube?
No, I'm okay in YouTube. No questions.
Okay, then with this, I don't know, any final thoughts, Ricardo, you would like to share to the audience? Let's bear in mind, this will keep recorded, and we will upload to the YouTube channel. So any final thoughts?
Oh, thank you, Hugo, y muchas gracias a CEO Latam por la invitación. Me da mucho gusto estar con todo el equipo aquí. Gracias.
No, pues muchísimas gracias, Ricardo. Muy interesante la sesión. Estoy seguro de que esta va a ser la continuación de muchas más que van a seguir viniendo, gracias a esta gran acuerdo de colaboración, alianza que se tiene entre Syniti y CEOs Latam. Maricela, Juan Carlos, muchas gracias por la oportunidad de moderar esta sesión. Y pues bueno, para nuestra audiencia que de manera síncrona nos acompañaron, muchísimas gracias. para los que están en YouTube, para los que están aquí en Zoom, para los que no pudieron atender, van a tener la oportunidad y nosotros también de volver a ver la sesión y ver la sesión a través de nuestro canal de CIO Latam. Muchas gracias a todos, que tengan buenas noches. Syniti, el equipo de Syniti, muchísimas gracias. Los esperamos para la siguiente en esta serie de sesiones.